So I've been communicating with Insta360, letting them know all the issues that I've had with my Luna Ultra. Obviously, the overheating is a huge issue. The fact that it can't record for longer than 30 to 50 minutes is a huge issue. I've gone ahead and returned the unit that I had, and Insta360 has been nice enough to agree to send me a new unit. I'm hoping that I don't have the same issues with this new unit. I want it to work as intended, and that said, I don't think I'm using it in a way that is asking too much from it. Now, a photographer like me, we're going to get a camera like this and we're going to set it up in a corner and ask it to track us and just capture BTS during a shoot, whether that shoot is an hour, 2 hours. BTS content in social media today is very prominent. Everyone wants to know how the sausage is made. That's a horrible way to put it, but everyone wants to know that it's not AI and there is like work that goes into this. And so the BTS aspect of this is very important to me, at least. I know that some of you, at least from what I've read in the comments, they think that this is not sort of like the normal use case for the camera. And to that, I will agree to that with an asterisk, because I don't think asking it to record for longer periods of time is asking too much of a product like that. I think like it should be able to record until the battery dies or the memory card fills up. It should not overheat. And there's a lot of comments in the last couple of videos with the same number, 2.5 hours. Mine recorded in 10,000 degree heat for 2.5 hours. And it's like, it's fine. 2.5 hours, I guess, is the number that the Luna needs to beat when I get the new one. If it's able to hit that 2.5 hour mark, cool. I'll be happy if it's able to hit an hour. Now, I do want to say the settings that I've had this camera in, I don't believe is out of the ordinary. Like, I'm shooting in a high bit rate. I'm shooting in 4K 30. I'm shooting in iLog. It should be able to handle that relatively easy. Out of all the tests that I did in those settings, I was not able to get longer than 50 minutes. So before I shipped my camera back to Insta360, on the day of, I decided to do one more test because I thought to myself, what is something that I'm missing? Like what have I not tested? And all these tests that I've done on with the camera are with the wide angle lens attachment. It is the wide angle lens attachment that came with the Insta360 Creator combo. So I didn't think it would be that much of an issue. But I did run one more test, and I'm gonna play it for you guys here. So you'll see in this video clip that I'm going to the menu. I'm gonna set the screen to never turn off because there is no dim setting in this camera. It's either it shuts off but continues to record, or you can set it to never turn off. So I just leave it on never. I set it to a high bit rate. I switch it to record to the micro SD card in the off chance that it would last longer than an hour and 30 minutes, because that's all the internal memory can record. I make sure that it's set to 4K 30. I go into the pro settings. I set it to iLog, set it to auto exposure, auto white balance. And right before I press record, I take off the wide angle lens and I start tracking on my face. Here's the temperature read in the room. And here's the temperature read of the camera. And during this test, that 30-minute mark passed, that 40-minute mark passed, that 50-minute mark passed. And I thought, cool, maybe I was just overworking the gimbal with that attachment on the camera itself. And it did beat an hour. Finally, I was able to get it to record for longer than an hour. But it still overheated at just over an hour. The fact that it did record for longer than an hour was a huge win for me, because this is what it tells me. Like, even if this is a faulty unit, this tells me that the gimbal is not properly balanced for when the wide angle lens is attached to it. and I try turning off the camera and putting the wide angle lens back on it and seeing just how the gimbal reacts when the camera's off, just seeing where the weight is distributed. Because through my experience working with gimbals, through all the Ronin gimbals that I've owned, I know that if a gimbal isn't balanced, it will work so much harder to make sure that the camera is steady. And that can result in the camera shaking, or it can also result in the battery just dying faster. So you want to make sure that the gimbal is balanced properly. Now, with the Pocket 4P, with this camera, the orientation of the lenses that they chose, putting the heavier, bigger camera on the bottom, and also choosing to go with heftier motors in this gimbal, because you can tell that the motors in this camera are bigger. It's the reason why it shakes, why it rattles, and why people complain about the rattles. It's because the motors are bigger on this gimbal. This right here, that's why it rattles. It's because there's bigger motors in there. And that shows when I'm able to record for this camera for longer than 5 hours in high bit rate, in 4K 30, in D-Log. No one's going to record for 5 hours. Maybe some people that are doing like the time lapses are going to be recording for that long. But even then, time lapses are not the same thing as recording for hours on end. It's taking a picture. It's not using as much power. But that said, the gimbal still has to work. It still has to keep the camera steady. And just knowing that the orientation on the Luna Ultra, because it's horizontal and because it's heavier on one side when that wide angle lens is on it, it has to work a little harder on two axes. When this camera, because of its vertical orientation, the cool thing about DJI and what they thought of is that there is some sort of connection between this wide angle lens and its gimbal. So when I put the wide angle lens back on the DJI and turn it on, you'll see in the corner here, right here, it says wide. And because the camera itself knows when the wide angle lens is attached, maybe it's switching the profile or the settings or the calibration of what the gimbal needs to be at in order for it to work with a slightly heavier front load. This can definitely just be my experience with the Insta360, but I know that there's other people out there experiencing the overheating issues. I know that there's other units out there like mine. So even if it was just a small run at the beginning of the manufacturing process of this camera that is having these issues, cool. Let's issue a recall Insta360. Let's fix them. Let's make sure that your customers are happy. We shouldn't have to be beta testing cameras to make sure that the firmware that you put out with the camera works as intended. It should just work. And I know that it's a first generation camera, and I know that there is issues that come along with it being a first generation camera. But I don't believe asking it to record for longer than an hour is asking too much of it. So when I do get the new Luna Ultra, I will be doing 2 more tests. And hopefully that'll be the end of it. And after those 2 tests, based on the results, I will give my final thoughts on the Insta360 versus the 4P. Having said all that, I have hopes for the Insta360 Luna. If it's just the fact that the gimbal's working a little harder, maybe it's some heat dissipation issues. If they fix that through a firmware update, even if they have to add a setting in the menu that says, do you have the wide angle lens on or off? Just for us to let the camera know that it has to work a little bit harder with that front load on the camera itself, fine. I just wanted to be able to record for longer than an hour and to be able to capture moments without me having to worry about it overheating or failing on me or freezing. Like I said, and like how I respond to everyone in the comments, because I've been responding to every single one of these comments, I don't want to hate on this product. This is my experience with this product. I want it to work. I want it to win. I want people to get a camera into their hands and be able to shoot with it as intended. I guess we have to wait and see what my results will be with the new one that I get in. And as soon as I get it, I'll do the tests and show the results. And I'll do very similar how I did in this video, just uncut results and show you guys I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm not trying to lie about the specs. I'm not being paid by anyone. This isn't a sponsored video. There's no links in the description. This is just me sharing my experience. Thank you if you made it this far. I appreciate everyone that has liked and subscribed over the last couple weeks. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys on Monday for the podcast. But until then, keep shooting. Peace.